Welcome to 30 Minutes of Faith. We're very happy to have Christie Young with us today. She's from Christ the King Retreat in Citrus Heights, and she and I have worked together on a couple of things before. She's a delightful woman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, John.
Let's start by telling the audience where you were born and raised, and I'll ask you about your family and some of those things.
Yeah, I was born in Sacramento and raised in the same area. I only moved once as a child. And my parents still reside in the house I was in most of my growing up in Elk Grove. So I grew up with 4 brothers and my mom and dad, and it was an interesting childhood. I begged quite often for a sister, but my brothers were wonderful, and I'm glad to have them.
Where do you fit?
I am number 4 of 5 children. So I have 3 older and 1 younger brother.
Did you win some preferential treatment by being the only girl?
Yes. Yeah,
well,
I don't think we can deny that.
I have a sister just younger than I am, and until I was 14 years old, she was the only sister with 5 boys. And
Okay.
she won quite a bit of preferential treatment. Then we got another little sister, and it changed a little bit.
Yeah.
You told me once that after you'd finished college and that you went to the East Coast. Can we talk about that a little bit? When you got out of high school, what were you going to do, and how did that lead to things thereafter?
Yeah, so I went to Laguna Creek High School, and when I was getting ready to graduate, I really wanted to find peers who were also interested in their faith. I'm Catholic, and I think that, the Protestants have really got the corner market on this whole, just fellowship and having that sense of community. And
they're plenty aggressive.
They do a really good job with that. And I felt like I missed that a little bit, and I wanted to be around people my own age who cared about their faith, who wanted to follow Christ. And I had a great foundation with my mother taught RCIA and CCD, so for people coming into the faith both as teenagers and adults. But I really sought, peers, a peer fellowship. And I ended up finding Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio.
Oh.
I always say it's the most Catholic place outside of the Vatican, and even then maybe, that's a toss-up.
Are you talking just the university or the town?
The university,
Oh,
the
okay.
university. And so I went there, and it was a great experience, a challenging one, though. I think I went assuming I was going to be this superhero Catholic and do, daily mass and the rosary and adoration and, all these things that Catholics do, of course, all the time. We all do that. That's not true. But I went, and within a couple weeks, I found that daily mass was too early for me. I fell asleep during the rosary, and adoration didn't make sense. I felt God more 10 feet outside of the adoration chapel, examining a leaf with a hole in it, and how that's like my heart. And, I didn't understand it. I wasn't there. And it took me a while to be okay with that.
Was it because of your age? You were still just a little too young, or it sort of got past your intellect? Or?
I don't think it was, because a lot of the other people my own age, these are now my peers, were doing that. And they struggled with why I couldn't do it also. And I think that was part of what challenged me, was that I was told how I was the wrong kind of Catholic. And bless their hearts, everyone was trying to evangelize, trying to teach me and love me to Jesus. But, it's a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds figuring out life. And it was a challenge for me, feeling like somehow I was doing it wrong. I wasn't being Catholic the right way.
Was that painful, or was that just sort of, they don't know what they're talking about? Or?
It was hard for me, I think, to not be totally accepted. I was told that I dressed immodestly, that I just need to pray the rosary anyway, just go to Mass anyway. And I had a lot of guy friends. I just always have been that way. I grew up with 4 brothers. I'm very comfortable around guys. And so then a lot of rumors were spread about me, because I was walking with a boy, and that clearly meant that more was happening. And then I was walking with a different boy, and so, whoa, watch out for Christie.
That would be painful.
It was hard. It was hard for me. And that was my whole first year. And one of the things that people would say to me when they were frustrated, I think, or didn't know what else to say, when clearly they weren't getting through to me to fix me, was, well, you just need a spiritual director. And so for me, it sounded like, you need a professional. Like, you need some help, Christie. So I was really reluctant to see a spiritual director. Usually is a priest or a nun. Other lay people can be trained in it as well. But I hadn't heard of that before. I didn't know what it was, but it sounded like, like you need a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And if you do, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was hard for me to accept at that time. Eventually, towards the end of the year, I gave in. I was like, okay, fine. I'll see your dumb spiritual director. And so I did. I went and I saw a priest. And the way I remember what he told me is a simple phrase, then go to the middle of the field. What that means for me is, in our conversation, I told him, where I felt God and where I didn't. And he basically said, if you feel God standing on your head in the middle of a field, go stand on your head in the middle of the field, because God meets you where you're at. And then he takes you where he wants you to be. And it's not about, I came to Franciscan maybe with like the equivalent of addition and subtraction in my faith. And a lot of them were on calculus, and I wasn't ready for that. I needed all those in-between steps. And that's okay.
Absolutely. Of course it is. Were you talking to your parents through all of this?
I don't recall how much I told them at the time. I was
only interested in wondering, when you're the parent, you're a long ways away, and your child, you're just kind of, sometimes you say, should I get on an airplane? And,
Yeah, I don't know that I told them the extent of all of that. I am, at least at this point, very open with my parents, and I generally feel that I've been that way most of my life, but I may not have expressed the extent of the struggle that I was facing, knowing that it would hurt them too.
When you were talking about early morning prayers and masses and all those things, I've got 6 or 8 friends who are Catholic priests and men I greatly love and respect, and some years ago one was going through a crossroads of life, and he was headed to the monastery up north above Oroville, and wanted to know, he was going to be up there for a week, wanted to know if I wanted to come up and join him. And I hadn't been to a monastery before, and I confess I went more out of curiosity. I mean, I was anxious to be with him and to spend time with him and talk with him and that, because we're really good friends. But I thought, gee, that's something I've never done before, and I'd like to do it. So, you're up at 6 in the morning to pray, and you pray again at 9 and again at noon. It enlightened me about just personal worship. It was a really, really good experience. I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't know what I'd missed, but I'm glad I didn't miss that. Yeah. So, did you graduate from the university there?
No, I didn't. I ended up transferring. I was studying business with a focus in marketing and entrepreneurship, and I really wanted to get into the creative side of it a little more and learn how to produce the commercials and produce the radio spots and all of that kind of stuff. So I transferred to Cal State Los Angeles and studied television and film production there.
Really?
Yeah.
And was that fun?
It was. I really enjoyed it, yeah.
So this explains why you know the drill here. Yeah. A whole bunch of these things we talked about earlier.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it, and I stayed in LA after that. I graduated from Cal State Los Angeles, and I stayed there. I was in LA for about 7 years before leaving. God kind of threw a wrench in all of my plans, of course. That's how that works.
Your plans and his plans often differ, don't they?
Yeah, I try to make them line up. I think that's really our goal as Christians, to follow Christ and to be in accord with his will. But often it is difficult to actualize that practice. So I had every intention of staying in LA. I worked at the Walt Disney Company doing internal marketing and communications, and I really enjoyed that. Dream job, working with Disney. And I had a roommate who was also Catholic, a young adult minister. I had a country band. She had her own band. We would play together, sing together, and I loved it. We started a Bible study at my house, It was an Interfaith Bible study, actually. And there was just so much good happening, and I was really content where I was at.
Glad you say that.
Yes. And then I got an invitation to discern a religious vocation. And I considered it very, very honestly, very earnestly, because it was for a documentary for the Lifetime television station. So I knew that if I was going to participate in this, that it had to be honest. It had to be faithful and very truthful, and that I had to mean it. I had to really be willing to accept that I might have a vocation to the religious life. And that was very hard. I had always just
That's quite
assumed.
a leap from Disney.
Yes, well, yeah, it's different. But I just always assumed, and I think most people do growing up, that they're going to be married. And really internalizing and accepting the fact that God might have a different plan for me hurt. It was challenging and anxiety-provoking, but ultimately, through all of that and through that discernment process, I did go on with the show. And it was a very joyful experience. Amidst all the anxiety and fears, there was a lot of peace and a lot of joy, feeling like I was really giving it my all. We talked about making your will one with Christ, and feeling like I'm really open. For once in my life, I can say that 100% honestly, I am open to whatever God has for me. And so I did. I entered the religious life. I was with the Daughters of St. Mary of Providence for about 8 months, January to August of last year. And I was a postulant with them. So I know when you're talking about visiting the monastery and the 6 a.m. prayer and the noontime prayer and the evening prayer and then the late night prayer, I've been there. And it's not easy. It's not. You're still dealing with personalities. I joke that, it's kind of like, imagine your workplace. Now imagine living with all of those people. Because it's kind of like that. You live together, you work together.
Well said.
And you get along, and it's wonderful. And, we say these are my sisters. But I don't know any family where you always get along with everybody. And so I think it's very honest in that way that we are sisters. We don't always get along. It's not always perfect. But we all love each other, and we all try together to do a good work for Christ and in and through Him.
Well, how did your parents and your brothers react to that?
Not well. They were not totally happy about it. They were happy and very encouraging that I was following where God was leading me, no matter where it took me. But they were sad that it was taking me to Chicago. It's just a different situation. Even though I had lived away for 7 years, I had been in Los Angeles, I could come home anytime. I could come home for a birthday, for a special celebration, a baby announcement. Even if I didn't have the money, my mom or dad, might pitch in and say, okay, well, we'll fly you down, or you can drive down. But being in Chicago and being in the convent, that wasn't an option. It was...
Yeah, Chicago was a ways away from Sacramento.
Yeah, the plane ride is a little more expensive, and I was in formation. You can only go home once a year, and even phone calls are different. You're not supposed to call all the time, and that's in a way to help you live and abandon to your own desires and to really fully rely on God and learn to immerse yourself in Him through whatever you're going through.
How were the early weeks of all of that?
It was stressful. It was really difficult for me initially because I found out that I was going about 2 weeks before I left. I had already requested to join, but I had a large debt to pay off of my student loans. You can't enter with debt. And the convent called me and said that they were going to be helping me with my debt and that they wanted me to come, and how was January 17th, which was just under 2 weeks away. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So I was excited and nervous and, everything you can imagine. but I knew that I didn't have time to be stressed. I didn't have time to be scared. I just had to figure out what I was supposed to bring and get that all together and go, and say goodbye to my friends and my family. And
Were they supportive, the people that you were in the middle of that circle of associations in Los Angeles?
in LA, yeah, well, I moved home. We finished filming around August, and I went back to LA in September for that month, and we had my birthday party. I didn't know if I was ever going to have another one quite the same. So we had a glitz and glam birthday party, and I wore a ball gown. It was really amazing.
That sounds fun.
It was fun, and we walked around Santa Monica just in a ball gown for no reason. And I moved home, and so I lived at home October through middle of January. So I'd already kind of said goodbye to my friends in LA. But by January, I had made some new friends in Sacramento. My close girlfriends from high school were like, "No, we just got you back. You can't leave again." What? And it was hard for my parents, but I'm grateful that I was able to be there for the holidays, not knowing when I would be able to go to the convent. So I think it was a mixed emotion for everybody. There was a certain sadness that still will get to me, but it was good.
So how did it happen from Chicago back home to Sacramento?
More anxiety. It's a theme in my life, I think.
Well, that's a nice description. That's fair.
Yeah, around May. So I got there in January, was sworn in, if you will. I became a postulant officially February 2nd.
Can I interrupt a second? Is
Yeah.
the Mother Superior like Mother Superior in The Sound of Music?
She was wonderful. I loved my Mother Superior. We would sit up at night and watch NCIS together. So, or have late night talks. And she used to work with gangs in Mexico and had so many great stories and was really, really wonderful and understanding. So she became a good friend of mine.
I
Actually,
didn't mean to sidetrack you. That
that's
just popped in
okay.
my
That's a worthy question. But come May, I was actually in New York. We were staying with another sister who had broken her shoulder, I think. We were helping her out. And I was making pancakes one morning in the shape of the Sacred Heart. And out of nowhere, I just started singing jazz standards, which are love songs mostly. And I'm singing these love songs, and I don't think anything of it. I sing a lot. And then I started thinking about my future husband and secretly how he's off to war right now, and God just needed me in the convent so that I didn't end up with the wrong guy.
There you have it.
Because my future husband, and so my brain starts going on these imaginary adventures, and then I was like, wait, no, I'm becoming a nun. What's happening? Go away. I'm rebuking marriage, rebuking the devil. I'm like, get out of my head. And that began the struggle for me with marriage coming back into my heart. And I questioned a lot, if that was me or God putting that back on the table. Was I running away? Was I choosing what I thought was easier? Marriage is not easy, I know, but for me it was the easier choice. It was something that I had always wanted and that I'd seen. I understood more about it.
Sure.
And that was a real battle for me. But ultimately, at the end of a few months' time, I couldn't deny that I know my shepherd's voice. I know him. I know when he speaks to me. And were it the same voice speaking to me in the same way, but telling me to stay in the convent, I wouldn't hesitate for a moment to believe that it was him. And I was denying it because it seemed like the easy thing. I didn't understand why now, why this. But I knew that he was calling me at the very least out of the convent, and I believe to marriage. We'll see where that goes. But again, it's living in abandon to my will, my desire, my thoughts of even what God has for me.
I've been a follower of Christ all my life and raised in a very Christian home. And when I was young, I would hear the whisperings, but I'd have to sort of say, can you say that again? Can you repeat that?
Speak up.
Yeah, exactly. When you practice it for a while, and as you get older, then you know that when you say, you know, the voice of the shepherd, you hear it right away and say, oh yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So how did you end up at Christ the King?
Well, so I discerned out of the convent and said goodbye for now to my sisters. And I moved home August 17th. And about a week later, it was the Thursday of that same week, actually. I intended to wait a while to look for a job. Everyone said, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know. I know God has something more for me than getting random job X in marketing, getting married, having babies, and singing in the choir. More than what my life had been before. And so I got on the diocesan webpage. The Sacramento Catholic Diocese has a website, and they'll list jobs.
I look at it routinely.
So I'm looking at the website for jobs, and I see a bunch of school jobs, and I thought, well, maybe there'll be a temporary or a part-time position until I figure out where God is calling me. And then down at the bottom, in between two graveyard jobs, was the listing for Christ the King Passionist Retreat Center. And I read through it. It was 7 pages long.
Wow.
Very long job description. But I felt like, I think this is something that I can do and that I would love to do. And so the following Monday, I put in my application, and 4 interviews later, I got the job.
They're blessed to have you there.
Oh, I'm blessed to be there. It was very providential. I feel like God just put it right there in front of me and led me to it.
And what's happening at Christ the King? If you just gave us a broad brush, what's unfolding over there?
It's really exciting right now. We just got a new executive director and director of ministry, Father Giltis Matthias. He came in from India. We're getting a new administrator. We have a lot of new people working there, a lot of new ideas. We just started a young adult ministry. I'm really, really excited about our young and married ministry. I haven't seen a whole lot of ongoing ministries for young Catholic married people. And any denomination can come. We obviously are Catholic,
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
It's a lovely, lovely place.
29 acres of just pristine beauty. And
serenity.
Raphael keeps it up. He says, I'm trying to make it look as nice as it does so that when people come, they have a taste of heaven. That's his ministry. So even the grounds, even the trees that you look at, the flowers, Raphael, that's his ministry to everybody who comes.
And it's really an island in the stream. I mean, you can go up and down the streets all day long,
Uh-huh. You would never know it's there.
Yeah,
it's our hidden gem.
And so do you feel like you'll be there for a bit?
Yeah, I intend to be. I tell people I've given up on planning my future. They say, where are you going to be in 5 years? I'm like, good question. That's, I don't know where I'll be next week.
Day at a time.
Yeah.
Is your faith a lot stronger now than it was 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think that I've always had a strong faith, but I think that it has been strengthened and grounded even more in Christ. I'm much more willing to admit my faults, to admit when I'm struggling of letting go of my own will.
That's called humility, isn't it?
Yeah, I still have a ways to go in it, but yeah, I think that God continues to call me forward and call me to a deeper conversion.
Your parents still here? And
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. What do you think, are you at peace that ultimately you will find your way to heaven and life will be good?
I think so. We say you can't ever speculate on where anyone's going, but I think that, God's greatest sign of love is the cross. And if we love him in return and do all that we can, it isn't our merit anyway that gets us to heaven. It's Christ's mercy. And I think if we love him to the best of our ability, to the best of our knowledge, then his goal in life, his joy, is to have us with him.
I have thought all of my life as it relates to Gethsemane and Calvary that if an angel would have stopped him and said, you know what, you don't have to do this because people don't care, it won't matter. And then an angel said, there's only one person who will care, and it's John Fish. I've thought all my life that Jesus would say, good, I'm going to still do it.
Yep.
Still going to do it. It's worth it to me. That's a wonderful thing. So, what do you do in your spare time when you're not working? And
Oh, what spare time? What is that word? I don't know it. I love to sing. I love to write. I joke with my friends. I said, is it weird that I want to volunteer? Because I work a lot in ministry, which a lot of people would consider kind of volunteering. But yeah, I write, I dance, I sing, hang out with my friends.
we'll talk some more when the episode is over here because we're at the end.
Okay.
And so I want to ask you if you could wave a magic wand to fix or repair or replace something in the world, what would that be?
You know, something that's very dear to me is the ministry of presence. I think that one of Christ's greatest strengths was just that he was present to people, that he was there and willing to listen, to meet people where they're at. And if there's one thing that we can do to model Christ, it is to be present to one another, truly, honestly, and just to love them.
Thank you very much.
Thank
It's
you.
nice to visit with you.
You as well, John.
That's a wonderful episode. Thank you.
Thank you.